July 1853. The sun rises over a peaceful Edo Bay, its waters undisturbed as fishermen quietly cast their nets. Suddenly, the calm is shattered. Four massive black smoke-belching ships appear on the horizon, their silhouettes unlike anything seen before. The fishermen freeze, staring in disbelief and fear, as the strange vessels draw closer, their engines rumbling ominously across the water. These are the Kurofune, or black ships, steam-powered warships from a distant world. To the Japanese, they seem almost otherworldly, a harbinger of change and uncertainty. Their arrival marks the end of an era of peace and isolation. Commanded by Commodore Perry, these American warships carry a message from the President of the United States. Open Japan's ports to trade. The message is clear, but the cannons lining the decks make it even clearer. This is not a polite request, but a demand backed by overwhelming force. The world is knocking and it will not be ignored. For over 2 centuries, Japan has been closed to the outside world, ruled by the Tokugawa Shogunate. Foreigners are forbidden, trade is tightly controlled, and the gates to the nation remain firmly shut. The shogunate's policy of sakoku, national isolation, has kept Japan safe, but also unprepared for the world beyond its shores. Perry's sudden arrival is a crisis unlike any before. Japan's leaders are thrown into turmoil, forced to confront a stark and terrifying choice: resist and risk destruction by a technologically superior enemy, or open up and risk losing control of their country and traditions. The stakes could not be higher. The black ships loom in the bay, a symbol of Western power and a warning to all of Japan. Their presence is a clear signal: Japan's long era of isolation is coming to an end, whether it is ready or not. The shogunate is paralyzed by indecision. Some samurai and officials demand resistance, clinging to honor and tradition. Others, seeing the might of the West, argue that resistance is futile and that adaptation is the only path to survival. The government is split, and fear spreads through the ranks. Stories of China's humiliating defeat in the Opium Wars haunt every discussion. The West is carving up Asia, and Japan's leaders know that their country could be next. The lessons of history weigh heavily on their minds. The debate is fierce and emotional. Should Japan fight for its honor, risking everything, or adapt to survive, even if it means changing forever? The future of the nation hangs in the balance. After delivering his demands, Perry leaves, promising to return for an answer. Japan is left with a brief, anxious pause, a moment to breathe, but not to relax. The clock is ticking. The internal conflict and uncertainty weaken the shogunate's grip on power. Doubt and fear spread, and the old order begins to crumble from within. The decision that lies ahead will shape not just the fate of the shogunate, but the destiny of all Japan. The country stands at a crossroads, with the future shrouded in uncertainty. The world is at their doorstep, and time is running out. Every moment brings the return of the black ships closer, and with them, the demand for a decision that cannot be avoided. The question is no longer if Japan will change, but how it will face the coming storm. The old ways are fading and a new era is about to begin. The black ships have forced open the door to Japan's future, shattering centuries of isolation in a single dramatic moment. Now Japan stands at the very edge of transformation, caught between past and future, tradition and change, ready to step into a new world. To truly grasp the shock and upheaval caused by Commodore Perry's arrival on Japanese shores, we must first look back at the world Japan had carefully built for itself over centuries. This was the era of sakoku, Japan's policy of national seclusion, a deliberate choice to isolate itself from the outside world. For more than 200 years, foreigners were strictly banned from entering, and Japanese citizens were forbidden to leave the country under penalty of law. The consequences for breaking these rules were severe. Often, the punishment was death, a stark warning to all. The Tokugawa Shogunate maintained a rigid hierarchical society. The emperor was a symbolic figurehead, while real power rested with the shogun. Below them were the daimyo, powerful feudal lords, and the samurai, the warrior class who enforced order. This system brought peace and stability, but it also led to stagnation. While Western nations surged ahead with industrialization, Japan remained rooted in its pre-industrial ways, largely untouched by the rapid changes transforming the world. Only a small group of Dutch traders confined to the artificial island of Dejima in Nagasaki were allowed limited contact, providing a narrow window to the West and a trickle of foreign knowledge. A handful of Japanese scholars, known as Rangaku experts, studied Dutch books to learn about Western medicine, astronomy, and military science, striving to keep up with global advancements. This small intellectual elite understood that the West possessed a significant technological edge, especially in weaponry and science. Meanwhile, Japan's arts and culture flourished. Kabuki theater, tea ceremonies, and vibrant festivals thrived, but military technology and industry lagged far behind. While samurai still wielded swords and bows, Western soldiers had already adopted rifles and cannons, widening the gap between Japan and the outside world. The Japanese economy was based on rice, not industry or manufacturing, making it vulnerable to the rapidly changing global landscape. Sakoku preserved Japan's traditions and way of life, but it also left the nation isolated and increasingly vulnerable to foreign threats. So when the black ships steamed into Japanese harbors, their arrival was a thunderous wake-up call. Japan was utterly unprepared for the modern world that had come knocking at its door. Isolation had kept Japan safe for centuries, but now, as the world changed around it, that same isolation threatened the nation's very survival and future. Japan's crisis unfolded in an age of imperialism. Western powers, Britain, France, Russia, America, were carving up Asia for resources and prestige. The Opium Wars showed how easily China was defeated and humiliated. Unequal treaties stripped nations of sovereignty. Western technology enforced domination. Japan's leaders saw the writing on the wall: resist and risk colonization. The lesson was clear: strength was survival. A new consensus formed: to avoid China's fate, Japan must modernize. The slogan, Fukoku Kyohei, enrich the country, strengthen the army. To protect Japan, they had to transform it. The race to modernize had begun. Perry's arrival shattered the old order. In 1868, reformist samurai overthrew the shogun and restored Emperor Meiji. The Meiji Restoration launched a revolution: feudal domains abolished, power centralized in Tokyo. Daimyo surrendered lands for pensions. Samurai lost privileges and swords. The new government built factories, shipyards, railways, and telegraphs. Model industries were sold to private hands, creating the zaibatsu. A Western-style constitution was adopted, modeled on Germany's, but real power stayed with the emperor and his advisors. The Meiji era blended Western forms with Japanese substance, the goal a unified modern nation-state. The transformation was rapid and relentless. Japan was determined to stand equal with the West. Enrich the country, strengthen the army. This powerful slogan became the driving force behind Japan's transformation during the Meiji era. It was more than just a phrase, it was a national mission that would reshape the country's destiny. Determined to catch up with the West, Meiji leaders set out to build a modern military from the ground up. They modeled their new army on Germany's disciplined forces, and their navy on the powerful British fleet, seeking the best of both worlds. Foreign military advisors were invited to Japan to train the troops, while promising Japanese officers were sent abroad to study the latest tactics and technologies in European academies. This exchange of knowledge was crucial for rapid modernization. In 1873, the introduction of universal conscription shattered centuries-old class divisions. For the first time, every able-bodied man, whether samurai, farmer, or merchant, was called to serve. The military became a melting pot, forging unity among Japan's diverse people. This sweeping change forged a new sense of national identity, with loyalty now directed toward the emperor and the nation as a whole. Yet not everyone embraced these reforms. Resistance and protests erupted across the country. Dispossessed samurai, stripped of their privileges and status, rose up in defiance, most famously in the Satsuma Rebellion, a dramatic last stand for the old order. The new modern army, now equipped with rifles, artillery, and Western tactics, quickly crushed the rebellion, signaling the end of the samurai's dominance. With the defeat of the samurai, the era of swords gave way to steel. Japan emerged as a modern nation, bustling with new energy and ambition. The results were soon clear. In 1895, Japan's modernized military shocked the world by defeating China in the First Sino-Japanese War, announcing its arrival as a formidable power. Just a decade later, Japan stunned the globe again by defeating Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, the first time an Asian nation had overcome a major European empire in modern warfare. These victories secured Japan's independence, won global respect, and inspired other nations across Asia. The world could no longer ignore Japan's rise. By the early 20th century, Japan had firmly established itself as a world power, its influence reaching far beyond its shores. The transformation was complete, but it came at a cost. The consequences of rapid militarization and modernization were only beginning to unfold. The military's newfound strength would shape Japan's destiny for decades to come, influencing its ambitions and future conflicts. Now the world watched Japan with new eyes, curious, cautious, and aware that a new era in global power had begun. The Iwakura mission embodied Japan's hunger to learn. In 1871, over 100 officials traveled to America and Europe, led by Iwakura Tomomi. Their goals study Western industry, government, and society. They visited factories, schools, parliaments, and railways, absorbing everything. The mission's findings shaped Meiji reforms, a German-inspired constitution, British-style navy, and modern education. Even children were sent abroad, like Suda Umeko, who returned to pioneer women's education. The mission proved Japan's leaders were willing to learn from the world to transform their own country. They invested in people, not just technology. The foundation of Japan's modernization was an educated populace. The Iwakura mission set the course for Japan's future. The Meiji Restoration was a triumph. Japan modernized, avoided colonization, and joined the ranks of world powers. The Meiji miracle inspired Asia and proved rapid change was possible, but the cost was high. Farmers were taxed into poverty, workers endured harsh conditions, and tradition was upended. The government was authoritarian, suppressing dissent and promoting emperor worship. Democracy was more appearance than reality. Japan learned imperialism from the West. After defeating China and Russia, it colonized Taiwan and Korea. The military grew powerful, nationalism intensified, and Japan's path led to war and tragedy in the 20th century. The light of Meiji progress cast a long shadow. The pursuit of strength brought both pride and peril. The story is a warning. Modernization without justice can lead to disaster. The Meiji era's legacy is complex, brilliant and dark, inspiring and cautionary. Japan's transformation changed the world for better and for worse. The lessons remain urgent today. The Meiji Restoration is a masterclass in national transformation. It shows the power of unity and clear purpose in a crisis. The leaders dismantled old systems but preserved Japanese spirit, Japanese soul, Western technology. Change was embraced, but identity was not lost. The story warns of the dangers of unchecked nationalism and imperialism. Power must be matched by responsibility and justice. The Meiji era's rapid change brought both progress and pain. Today, as the world faces new challenges, the Meiji story urges us to adapt wisely. What must we change, and what must we preserve? The Meiji miracle reminds us, in crisis, extraordinary change is possible, for better or worse.